stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of this nation. Ambazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meeting our needs, and your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of this nation.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Mr. Ghana Valentine.
You're welcome. Ambazonia, oye! Oye! Southern Cameroon, oye! Oye! ADF, oye! Oye! Sokadev, oye! Oye! Red Dragons, oye! Oye! AMC, oye! Oye! It's very humbling for me to be introduced by Dr. Fontaine-Neva. It's very humbling and very, I'll just say humbling to be speaking after such a series of gifted, knowledgeable, profound, grounded speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to all of you guys to this conference, which we come here to chat the way to diagnose and to set the course straight for our communal cause, the cause of the liberation of Ambazonia. When Dr. Fontaine called me and talked about this conference, I hold him in such high awe that I wanted to ask him that, Doctor, can I be the one to introduce you at this conference? But ironically, he had planned to introduce me. He didn't tell me he was going to introduce me. So I'm very humbled by that. I'm very humbled also because I pay attention to all the luminary figures that are here. To Dr. Anyangwe, to Bo Hebert, to Mr. Hardison Lobe here, to Dr. Akwanga, and to a lot of the luminary figures that have charted the course of this struggle before us. And this struggle has affected us for a long time in so many personal ways. I'm going to correct a few things that Dr. Fontaine said, but he was right in course. I hate to say God told me or God tapped my shoulder, but I remember exactly when I was called to the consciousness of this struggle. And the reason why I remember that date and that time so in such a crisp manner was because it was the day Cameroon played Zambia. And I think Zambia, the KK11 eliminated Cameroon from going, I don't know if it was to the World Cup or to the African Nations Cup, something. And the reason why I remember that day was because as from 3 students of CPC Bali, we had heard that they were going to project that game on TV. And we left Dutch school to go to Bamenda and able to watch that game on TV. And when we got to Bamenda, we realized TV had not yet come, so we had to return back to school. So, on our way of returning back to school, we stopped, it was about 3 of us, we stopped by the Bali airport, and we sort of just trekked and chatted back and forth. And as we trekked and chatted back and forth, we sort of mentally meandered our way into the discussion about the Southern Cameroons. I was 13 years, I think about 13 years old then. And what I'm going to say, our lady from Cameroon who talked about just finding a way to end this conflict, just finding peace. It's going to answer that question because as some speakers here have stated, there can be no peace without justice.
Amen.
So when they started toiling with, and from that discussion, we sort of formed a group in Bali. And that's why I have so much awe for people like Dr. Akwanga, because their thoughts then eventually led them to forming armed groups that were destined to address the situation of the Southern Cameroons. We formed a group, and this group was, it was similar to what Dr. Akwanga, Picho Ayaba, them have created. We built a committee, we're holding our meetings, we're gathering funds. This was back in 1983, 1984. We developed our code language, And it was this group that led the way to the strikes in the Northwest and the Southwest province when, and I think Professor George Gango was Minister of Education, and they wanted to change the GCE system from the baccalaureate, blah, blah, blah. I mean, from the GCE system as we know it to the back. So we galvanized students, we planned meetings, we circulated circulars, and we struck. We hit Bamenda, we gathered the schools, PSS Mancon, Longla, and there was a whole protest in Abakwa. So, and we had planned the strike so well. We had our placards, we had designed everything. So when the police forces descended on the students, some of us had already planned our escape ahead of time. So when they descended on the students and they caught some of them, they were very mesmerized about the meticulous nature that went into the planning. Yeah. We were advocating for the release of Ngozi Dinka. We're, again, like you say, we're just pleading for the stop of linguistic discrimination in Cameroon. And so 2 weeks after the strike, they arrested students, they were interviewing, they were trying to find out who the ringleaders of this strike were. So 2 weeks later, I was in Pali, we were just from having lunch, and mobile wing gendarmerie and police officers descended on the campus, and they said they were looking for Valentine Ghana. So I was a scrawny, tiny old, I think about 15, 16-year-old kid there. So they pointed that I was the guy. They were surprised to see that I was just this little guy that was blowing away. So when they called me and they said they gave me the convocation, they were waiting for me at the gendarmerie. I said, you guys, let me go to my room and get my jacket. So they thought I was trying to escape, but I was waiting for them, and I was not waiting for them because I was scared. I was waiting for them because I was prepared to defend the strike. And if it meant they were going to kill me, so be it. So they took me, they grilled me there. The governor's representative was there, the colonel for the Northwest, the representative from presidency, the representative from the Presbyterian Church. And they grilled me for about 5-6 hours. And then they know, okay, they've gotten the leader. That night they released a lot of the students from the BMM. We stayed there for about 2 months. So I was in detention there for about 2 months. And I really didn't mean to talk about myself and that part of the story, because one humbling thing that I've appreciated about Dr. Fontem is that when he gave his presentation, he did not even talk about the time he spent in Kondongi. He did not make it about himself. So my apologies if I've gone into that history, but just to correct a few things and to emphasize on what Dr. Fontem said. But the topic which I'm here to present and which Dr. Fontem asked me to present on is the Cameroon War, searching for a path to sustainable peace. And the very knowledgeable, very learned, very eloquent speakers who have spoken have laid a groundwork and covered almost everything. And I just can touch on it. I mean, it's just like a painting that I have to just brush on parts of it, and it will be done. But we have, if we are searching for a path to sustainable peace, we have to ask ourselves some critical questions. Europe fought a lot of wars for a lot of years. Some of us who studied history, the little that I studied in secondary school, we talk about the Napoleonic Wars, we talk about the Continental War that France waged on Europe, we talk about the Moscow campaign and all of that. How did Europe attain sustainable peace? We look at the situation of Eritrea and Ethiopia, where it was a federation, and Ethiopia abrogated the federation, and now they have sustainable peace. So we have to ask ourselves, how did they attain sustainable peace? We also have to look at the case of Sudan, that is on the path to attaining sustainable peace. And now there are two parts of it, North Sudan and South Sudan. How did it happen that they are now on the path to sustainable peace? Another example we have to look at is warring the United States when they fought against the Japanese. How did they get to a sustainable peace? We also look at the situation in South Africa. Growing up in the 80s, I used to read Jeune Afrique, New African, African, all of those magazines cover to cover, as I suppose a lot of you guys used to. We used to hear about the frontline states, Mozambique, Botswana, Namibia, Nigeria, Angola, they were all fighting wars against South Africa. We knew of the powers that were sponsoring people like Jonas Savimbi. We knew of the warring factions in South Africa, whether it was the Buthelezis in Qatar trying to destabilize the ANC, the massacres, the Soweto massacres, all of that. But South Africa and the frontline states are now at a sort of sustainable peace. So we have to ask ourselves, how did they get to sustainable peace? Permit me quote one more example. In the 80s, we used to hear of the Israeli incursion into Lebanon. Israel occupied southern Lebanon just like La Republic is occupying Ambazonia for a long time. And we used to hear of the factions in Lebanon, the Islamic Druze, Hezbollah, the Christian militias, and they fought and they killed people. How did Lebanon get to sustainable peace that we don't hear about Lebanon anymore? Why does mighty Israel not venture into Lebanon anymore? Exactly. So we have to ask ourselves, how did they get to sustainable peace? So when they ask me to talk about sustainable peace, first, what is peace? Peace is freedom from disturbance or tranquility. A state or period in which there is no war or where the war has ended. And so we also have to ask ourselves, what is the definition of sustainable peace? In trying to look at the various materials that I could scrape the definition of sustainable peace from, I went to UN Resolution 70/262 of April 27, 2016. It defines sustainable peace as should be broadly understood as a goal and a process to build a common vision of a society, ensuring that the needs of all segments of the population are taken into account, which encompasses activities aimed at preventing the outbreak, escalation, continuation, and recurrence of conflict, addressing root causes, assisting parties to conflict to end hostilities, ensuring national reconciliation and moving towards recovery, reconstruction and development, and emphasizing sustaining peace is a shared task and responsibility that needs to be fulfilled by the government and all other national stakeholders. So we come back to the situation of Ambazonia and we ask ourselves, how did we get to the situation of conflict that we are talking about needing sustainable peace? And again, like I said, all the speakers that have spoken before me, Dr. Anyangwe, Bo Herbert, Hadison here, Dr. Akwanka, Dr. Fontaine, they've all articulated where the problem is. In law, when we define a problem, say when a crime has been committed, there are two sets of things that we look at. We look at the facts and we look at the rules. So I'm not going to repeat a lot of what they've already said. I'm just going to zoom in on the facts of our situation or some relevant facts that have a bearing on our situation, and I'm going to look at the rules that apply. First, let me indulge on the rules. If you read any legal conclusion, they are always talking about the holding. The holding, again, is always based on the rules. As Dr. Anyangwe and Bo Herbert articulated, our independence was declared through UN Resolution 1514. We talked a lot about UN Resolution 1608 XV. UN Resolution 1608 was only crafted to steal our independence, which we would have gotten from UN Resolution 1514. And so, permit me read just Article 1 and Article 5 of UN Resolution 1514. Article 1, the subjection of peoples to alien subjugation, domination, and exploitation constitutes a denial of fundamental human rights, is contrary to the Charter of the United Nations, and is an impediment to the promotion of world peace and cooperation. Article 5 of UN Resolution 1514 XV. Immediate steps shall be taken, and again this resolution was passed December 14, 1960. Immediate steps shall be taken in trust and self-governing territories for all other territories which have not yet attained independence to transfer all powers to the peoples of those territories without any conditions or reservations, in accordance with their freely expressed will and desire, without any distinction as to race, creed, color, in order to enable them to enjoy complete independence. The Southern Cameroons was a territory that had already been established at the Treaty of Versailles in 1919. The only reason why Alsace and Lorraine are under France today is because at the settlement of the First World War and at the Treaty of Versailles, the same treaty that created the Southern Cameroons as a distinct international treaty, gave France the right to have Alsace-Lorraine. If France is trying to deprive us of our independence, then they might well as just hand Alsace and Lorraine back to Germany, because there are a lot of people of Germanic origin who reside in Alsace and Lorraine. Consistent again with the rules. Let's look at UN Resolution 1608, the one that we always quote. Article 3, and then again this UN resolution was passed on April 21st, 1961. Article 3 considers that the people of the two parts of the trust territory, having freely and sacredly expressed their wishes with regards to their respective futures in accordance with General Assembly Resolution 1352 and 1473, the decisions made by them through democratic processes under the supervision of the United Nations should be immediately implemented. Article 5 invites the administering authority, the government of the Southern Cameroons and the Republic of Cameroon, to initiate urgent discussions with a view to finalizing before October 1 the arrangements by which the agreed and declared policies of all parties should be implemented. There are two problems here. When they say invite the administering authority, inviting Britain. Britain was the administering authority. The implementation or the attempted implementation of 1608 is null and void without this administering authority overseeing the Southern Cameroons, the Republic of French Cameroon, then in conjunction with France to create a treaty of union. A treaty of union, as we always say, doesn't exist because UN Resolution 1608 was not implemented. Let's look again at UN Resolution 76A and B. The main basic objective of the trusteeship system, in accordance with the purposes of the United Nations laid down in Article 1 of the present chapter, shall be A, to further international peace and security. B, to promote the political, economic, and social and educational advancement of the inhabitants of the trust territories and their progressive development towards self-government or independence as may be appropriate in the particular circumstance. Do we have self-government? No. Do we need to enforce our independence? Yes. Another informing opinion that we need to factor in as we talk about developing, sustaining peace is the ruling of the African Court of Banjul, the African Human Rights Court, in 2009. A ruling that took years for the African Court in Banjul to pass because La République du Cameroun kept bribing and postponing that ruling for as long as it could. This was the Kevin Wanga Goudme et al. v. Cameroon. The Kevin Goudme ruling by the African Court of Human and People's Rights, seated in Banjul, Gambia, found that among several violations of the African Charter, which Cameroon is a signatory of, the state of Cameroon was in violation of Articles 2, 4, 5, 7, and 20, and in violation of the right to self-determination of the indigenes of the Southern Cameroon. Again, reaffirming that we are a distinct people, a distinct nation with a right to self-determination. So when my sisters from Cameroon, God bless them and God bless their hearts, say, just end this war, let's just have peace, does that translate into just sweep your rights away? Again, I've articulated some of the main rules that govern our situation as we search a path to sustainable peace. Let's look at some of the facts. And again, Professor Anyangwe, Mr. Bo Herbert, and all the other speakers have articulated some of the facts. 1608 and 1514 mandated handing independence to the colonial territories and the trusteeship territories consistent with the self-determination wishes of the people. The monthly conference of August 10th and 11th, 1959, as has been articulated. It was an all-party plebiscite conference of the leaders of the Southern Cameroons. And since Britain was trying to craft a plebiscite, the leaders met to decide what the plebiscite language was supposed to be. So there were two options. And the options were either craft the plebiscite language should be a choice between A, federation with Nigeria, or outright independence. The other option was federation with Nigeria or independence with La République or joining La République. The leaders voted by a supermajority of the vote, 67 to 33%, that their option should be federation with Nigeria or outright independence. As Dr. Anyangwe rightly stated, we should have had the third option for the conditions of UN Resolution 1514 to be fulfilled. We neither had the third option, nor did we have the option which our leaders chose. The violation that has been perpetrated on us, Ambazonians, Southern Cameroonians, is that which we cannot stomach, is that which we have the duty in history, or by history, to fight against. Let's look at some of the opinions in some of the magazines at that time, leading up to 1959. It is quoted in the local Grassfield Gazette of December 1959 that in one of the conferences held between the representatives of the UN and those of the United Kingdom and Ireland as the administrative authorities and the local traditional rulers, the fund of Bafut admonished the wrong choices that were being presented by stating, "We rejected Dr. Endeli because he wanted to take us back to Nigeria. If Mr. Fonja tries to take us back to French Cameroon, we shall run away from him. French Cameroon is fire and Nigeria is water. I support secession from Nigeria without unification with French Cameroon." Let's look at some more facts. Declassified documents from exchanges in the British Parliament on August 1st, 1961 document exchanges between British parliamentarians lamenting Britain's role in not preparing the Southern Cameroons for independence. Honorable Thompson cited Article 4 of the original trusteeship agreement between Britain and the United Nations, which states, "The administrative authority shall be responsible for peace, order, good governance, and defense of territory, and for ensuring that it shall play its part in the maintenance of international peace and security." In the transcript of exchanges, Honorable Thompson further castigates the British government for being absent from the discussions between Mr. Foncha and Mr. Ahijo, which were a breach of Britain's duty under UN Resolution 1608. Let's look at one more fact. Declassified cables from the United States Department, dispatch number 440 from Lagos, also document repeated demands from the Southern Cameroonian leaders, such as Mr. Foncha and Mr. Muna, that the Southern Cameroons should be allowed to have its independence, then work out a union with French Cameroon at a later date. A request which were denied by the British. In the exchanges in Parliament, Honorable Thompson quotes a statement made to the Daily Express by Mr. Foncha that we have made 3 requests for the Daily Express. We have made 3 requests for the British authorities to stay after October 1st, and they have refused. Thus, Britain breached its duty under the UN trusteeship system. Until date, the Southern Cameroons has not been decolonized. So let's ask ourselves, because the facts clearly demonstrate that the plebiscite and the choices presented during the February 11th, 1961 were A, against the wishes of the people of the Trust Territory of Cameroon. B, against the communicated directives of the leaders and the governing authority of the Trust Territory of Southern Cameroon. C, against the letter and spirit of UN Resolution 1514 XV and UN Resolution 1608 XV. D, against the letter and spirit of Article 76A and B of the United Nations Charter. The conclusion to surmise from here is that, again, the Southern Cameroons has not and was never decolonized. So our problem is not a problem of marginalization. Our problem is not a problem of discrimination. Our problem is a problem of colonialism that still exists. So as we ponder about what we need to do, as we ponder about having peace, and as we reflect on the questions that I asked before, the people of Eritrea, the people of South Africa, the people of Europe, the people of South Sudan, how did they achieve sustainable peace? Every single death that we have experienced in the Southern Cameroons is a calamity that we should not afford to bear. But we ask ourselves another question when we look back at this conflict that took place. How many people did Europe lose during the Second World War? 50 million. Yep. How many Jews were killed in Europe during the Second World War? 6 million Jews. So our problem is a decision, as Dr. Anyangwe again puts it, between dependence and freedom. So our people are in armed conflict. We are in armed conflict because there is nothing that binds us between La Republique and the Southern Cameroons. If we look at examples of countries or unions that have bound agglomerations, we look at the example of the United States. How did it come about that we have a constitution that we fancy and that we live so freely in? In the 1770s, 1780s, all the original 13 colonies had to go into negotiations. Negotiations that culminated in the Constitution, 1791, in Philadelphia. And that Constitution, which is their own Treaty of Union, gave us the first 10 amendments of the United States Constitution. And in the first amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and from religion, freedom of assembly. And that's why we can so freely meet here to deliberate and plan our common future and destiny. So why would we as human beings want to opt for a lesser and inferior option of being slaves with La Republique? Do we want to do that? No! We look again at the option. We look again at Europe, mainland Europe. They fought their wars. After the Second World War, they realized that fighting was not the option they should take. They did not ask one party to surrender to the other. They started with the European Coal and Steel Union in the 50s. The European Steel and Coal Union is what morphed into the EEC, the European Economic Community. And from the European Economic Community, they have the European Union. But this was free agreements crafted, debated on, voted on, and ratified by the parliaments of the respective countries. In fact, the person who promulgated, advocated for, marketed, and sold the final treaty that led to the EU was a Frenchman, Jacques Delors. Jacques Delors is the one who sold the Treaty of Maastricht that all came into being in 1993. So they have a union, an EU that is based on the Treaty of Union. And then when they come to Africans, or between La Republic and Ambazonia, they want us to submit as slaves to La Republic. No. Do we want to do that? No! So we look again at the situation of the German Federation, for those of you guys who studied history. We look at Otto von Bismarck. When Otto von Bismarck came to power, and Kaiser William was the head of Prussia, Bismarck was the prime minister. Despite the fact that Prussia was more powerful, Bismarck did not go conquering the principalities of Bavaria and all the others. What did Bismarck do? He negotiated with all of those principalities to become part of the modern day Germany. So are we children of a lesser God to be captured and we stay in slavery? No! We look at the case of Yugoslavia, which I call Yugophalia, under Stalin and later on Marshal Tito. They agglomerated those areas, Montenegro, Kosovo, Croatia, Bosnia, and they held them together under force until the Croatians and the Bosnians in the mid-90s said enough was enough, and they fought against the Serbians just like we are fighting against La Republic, and tens of thousands of people died, and we all know of the massacre of Srebrenica that happened. And we saw blood, and we contemplate going back to the house of the master because we are afraid to spill blood. Are we children of a lesser God? No! Say it. And so we look at all of these examples. We look at the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, where the iron hand of the Communist Union held all of these countries together. Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Lithuania, Estonia, all of them. And all of them fought their way and eventually got under the iron boot of oppression and annexation. And if we give up today fighting against La Republic, do we want to tell our grandchildren that we were children of a lesser God and we succumbed to La Republic? No! And so when we ask ourselves that we want a path to sustainable peace, in law, when we have a situation, we always look at precedent. What happened before? And it's from what happened before that we learn on how to chart our way forward. In conclusion, the Southern Cameroon has a population of over 8 million inhabitants and a GDP with conservative estimates of over 20 billion US dollars. It is a territory more populated than New Zealand, Panama, Comoros, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, the Central African Republic, Congo Brazzaville, Equatorial Guinea, Liberia, Swaziland, Gabon, Namibia, Eritrea, Botswana, Lesotho, Djibouti, Bahrain, Lebanon, and it is just as populated as Austria and Israel. Southern Cameroonians are geographically mobile, intellectually ambitious, and economically enterprising. We yearn to have a nation back from the fangs of colonialism. We yearn to have a nation that is ruled by a constitution and by the rule of law. We yearn to live as a free people in pursuit of our God-given right to happiness. That will not happen under colonialism or annexation by La Republique du Cameroon. Our nation is our right, our might, our resolve. And just to end with a response to our sisters and a lot of people who have that mindset of saying we should just federate, we should just give in, we should just end it. When there's no justice, there is no peace. Just as a 13-year-old boy, I was planning on how we were going to fight this fight. Just as a teenager, Dr. Akwaka, Cho Ayaba, and a lot of others were planning on how they were going to have this fight. And we had not started military conflict yet. The 10-year-olds today who have seen their sisters raped, who have seen their mothers raped, who have seen La Republic forces come and brutalize us, who have seen their villages burned down. Do you think they are going to give up 20 years from now? No. So why would we want to kick the can down? We are up to the fight. We can do it. Let's stiffen our resolve. Let's rise. And let's fight.
Glory will rise and never to fall. Hearing a nation flowing with milk and honey. Glory, glory, glory to the Father for making you a nation, a joy forevermore. Ambazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meeting our needs. And your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of this